Hello everyone and welcome. I'm going to back this up a little bit. This is the second episode of the I Teach TV Network, and you can go to iteachtvnetwork.com to find out more about what shows will be coming up. We have Jess, the whimsical teacher, tomorrow, and Ashlyn will be coming on Thursday with some great tips for you guys. Hi Tania. So be sure that you check out the website, and if you know anyone that works with people with ADHD or lives with people with ADHD, be sure to invite them to this broadcast. And there are some ways that you can find me on social media if you would like to find out more from me. Hi Sheila. So I'm going to flip this around. Hello everyone. And we will go ahead and get started. So if you don't know me, my name's Amy Harris, and I'm a special education teacher. This is my 15th year teaching. So as a special education teacher, I would say I did some numbers today. Hi, Mikey. And I believe that about 90% of my students either have a diagnosis of ADHD or have significant focus and attention problems. Also, I live with 2 people with ADHD, so this subject is near and dear to my heart. And yes, be sure that you share this with your followers, especially if you have teacher followers or parent followers, because this issue definitely touches all of us. Oh, thank you, Kim. I appreciate that. Yeah, I wasn't doing my morning scopes as much because I drowned my phone, but now I have a new phone. So just in time for this wonderful I Teach TV network. This is going to be so exciting. It's going to be a platform where you can find lots of great teachers with great ideas to help you in all areas of your teaching. Thank you, Julie. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. So if you don't know what ADHD is, I think everyone has ideas about what it is. It is a disorder that affects about 10% of kids. There's some different numbers flying around out there. But basically it is, it affects the prefrontal cortex. So the part of your brain that makes decisions, that helps you learn, that helps control impulses. And so typically students with ADHD have about an average of a 3-year delay in those functions. So yeah, there's lots of THMs here. So I think one of the things that is really hard for teachers and parents to realize sometimes is it's a true delay. So I kind of compare it to if you were working with a student with dyslexia and you knew that they had a reading disability. You wouldn't send home a novel and say, read this novel harder. But with a kid with ADHD, we sometimes have no problem being like, you need to work harder, you need to try harder, you need to focus harder. Well, that is where the disability actually is in an ADHD brain. There's an actual tendency to be a 3-year delay, sometimes as much as 5-year delay, in the ability to focus and pay attention. So with my son with ADHD, he has a lot of trouble turning in work. So when he was in 8th grade, he was turning in work more at the level of maybe like a 5th grader. And if you think about the way that we do school, in kindergarten, you know, we go through their folders and we check their folders and we kind of expect their parents to put things in their folders for them. But by 3rd grade, we have kids, you know, turning in all their work. And if they don't turn it in, we feel like, you know, they don't care or that they're lazy. And that really and truly is, in a person with true ADHD, that is where their disability lies. And like Julie said, a lot of boys are very disorganized. There is a big difference in the way ADHD can look in a girl and a boy also. There's also several types of ADHD. So there are kids who have the inattentive type of ADHD, and a lot of times that gets overlooked because they sit quietly, they look like they might be paying attention, but they're not taking in all the directions, and especially multi-step directions. There's also ADHD that has that hyperactivity component, and that is a lot more obvious in the classroom because those are the kids that are always moving and fidgeting and, you know, making themselves known. So one of the reasons that I'm so passionate about helping people learn about ADHD is that There's a lot of research to show that students with ADHD tend to have really low self-esteem. And if you've ever followed me, oh, thank you, Sheila. If you've ever followed me on Periscope, you know that my passion is teaching kids confidence. I feel like, especially since I work with kids with learning disabilities, you know, they're going to learn to read eventually. There's a learning curve, and they're not going to necessarily fit the timeline of our standard course of study or Common Core. But that confidence, we have a chance when we have them in our classrooms to teach them the skills and growth mindset and confidence. And in students with ADHD and learning disabilities, that confidence, absolutely, Ashley, I would love to have some ideas for more scopes because I'm going to be doing the show every Tuesday. So I have lots of ideas, but I'm always looking for more, and language disorders is a big one. So with ADHD, there's just a strong tendency for low confidence. Because if you think about those kids who are not paying attention, who are not turning in their work, who are moving around the classroom all the time, what are we always doing in the classroom? We're always calling them down. In our homes, if we have students with ADHD, we're always telling them to hurry up, why aren't you ready? There's a lot of room for correction of behavior. So Ashley, I have stability balls in my classroom, and they do help. You have to really set boundaries and guidelines around the use of them. Like, I have a rule in my classroom that you have to keep at least 1 foot on the floor when you're in a special chair. I think flexible seating is great. Also fidget items, yeah, and they don't have to be anything major, like binder clips are great. My rule for these is if you have a desk with an opening, I want it under the table or in the desk. So I don't mind if they fidget with their hands, but their eyes don't need to be on the fidget, because eye contact is super important, not only for them to learn to pay attention, but also to learn to kind of adjust to real world expectations, because in the job force, people are not going to be thinking that you're paying attention if you're not looking. Some people can pay attention without eye contact, but eye contact is super important. So I think my biggest tip is just to remember that 3-year delay. Velcro under the desk is also a great one. And it's different for every kid. You know, ADHD especially is not a one-size-fits-all situation. But yes, for the fidgets, I encourage fidgeting. I'm a fidgeter, I'm a doodler. But you want to keep it under the table. So I try to teach my kids how to modify and how to accommodate their behavior more independently, but in a way that is more acceptable in the classroom and the workforce. I went to a really great behavior training a couple weeks ago, and she talked about how we are all teaching our students to be professionals. So they're professionals in training. With the Velcro, you can put like the rough side under the table and they can touch it, or the soft side. So it's just some sensory input. A good way to fidget. But I think it's super important to remember that confidence piece and to really strive, and trust me, I do not always do this myself, but really strive to not call down kids by name. Try to recognize kids that are doing the targeted behavior and praise them for having the good behavior rather than calling people down by name. A lot of kids with ADHD hear their name called so much, and every time that's like a trigger. It's kind of a shame trigger. If you've ever followed any of Brene Brown's work, she talks a lot about shame, and a lot of the foundation of the shame is from experiences in school. 85% of people have a shame experience at school that they can target and remember that changed how they thought about themselves as learners. Yes, Julie, I do inclusion now. So yeah, to tell you, I have had 15 years of experience as a special educator. I have done really intensive classrooms, self-contained classrooms. Right now, I teach resource and I do a lot of inclusion. I have one class that I work with about 2 hours a day, a 3rd grader, and a 3rd grade class. And then I work in 2nd grade as well. Felicity, we cannot diagnose ADHD or any medical condition at school. So what I see working really well is when the school and the pediatrician work in conjunction. So we can fill out some checklists for the pediatrician. Thank you, Sheila. And we can send it to the pediatrician, but we cannot make a diagnosis of ADHD at school. We can report behaviors that we see, but we cannot make a diagnosis. And that's one of the other things I think it's really important to remember. I know that we can be working with these students and feel like, man, if they just had some medication, they would do so much better. And that may be true, but we're not medical professionals, and there's a lot of things at play that we don't know. What we can control is what we do in our classrooms to make them successful. So number one, I think, is to remember that 3-year delay and manage your expectations based on that. So don't expect a kid who can't do 10% of the work in the classroom to get up to 100% by the end of the year. Maybe they will, but a realistic expectation might be 70 to 80%. And that would be a huge improvement and a huge growth. Oh, wow. So I think managing expectations is really important. I also think that using things like timers. I love these time timers. So for a kid who has trouble getting started with their work, this is something that I'll do a lot. So these are called time timers, and I got them off of Amazon. You can get them at timetimer.com. So let's say a kid sits around and doesn't get started on their work, and they've taken up 30 minutes. Actually, I do it both ways. There's also really small versions of this, and you can also go to digitalstopwatch.com, and there's a visual timer, just like this, that comes up online. It's free. It's onlinestopwatch.com. So let's say the kids sat around. This is really good for homework at home too. So let's say you gave them time to do homework, and they took 45 minutes of just moaning and complaining. And then once they started doing their work, it took them 10 minutes. So I'll show my kids this, and this is also really great for kids on the autism spectrum. I'll say, you know, if you had just started when we started, you would have taken 10 minutes. But instead, you took 45 minutes. If you had taken 10 minutes to do your work, you would have had 35 minutes to play video games, talk to your friends, whatever. This visual tool I find super helpful for my kids with ADHD. Another thing to think about is there's kind of 3 areas where you're really going to see the impact of ADHD at school, and that is executive function, like understanding what to pay attention to, remembering to turn in work. This is timetimers.com or timetimer.com. They're a little expensive. I did a Donors Choose grant because I like to keep several of these around. I use them all the time. There's an iPad app. I can't remember what it's called, but I use that with my 4-year-old a lot too. I've used it since he was like 1 and he understood it. Focus, obviously, is something that we see a lot of problems with at school, and impulse control. So one of the things that I have recently started doing for impulse control is, you know, half the time we're teaching and we, so there's one on Dojo too, Mikey. Good to know. So Mikey says there's a timer like that on Class Dojo. So when we're teaching, sometimes we say something and we want everyone to answer, and sometimes we want them to raise their hands, and a lot of times we know what we want them to do, but this is a good visual. So just have a red hand that says raise your hand to answer, and then a green hand that says answer if you know. So this helps me to understand what I want them to do. So it helps me keep my expectations. Sometimes I can be a little lenient because I'm so understanding that it's really important to set those good boundaries. So the more visuals like this that I do, the more consistent I am with my expectations. So red is raise your hand. Another thing I have started doing with my kids, when I hold up a learning tool, I say stop and think. So I point to the picture and they know that's think time, because everyone processes at a different speed. And if you're kind of a slower processor, you're never getting a chance to have the answer. And my kids with impulse control problems just start yelling out guesses and they have not thought about it all. So I point to whatever we're using, the learning target, and I say stop and think. And then I point to the class for when I want them to answer, and they're getting really good at it, partially because I think we're doing a lot of whole brain teaching this year. Whole brain teaching is a great resource to help your kids with attention problems. Even if you just do the rules are a great way to not call out names, because if you've done whole brain teaching, you know there's the 5 basic rules, and then I have my chair rule. So when kids start falling off the special chairs, I just say chair rule, keep at least 1 foot on the floor. I don't say anyone's name. They know if they just fell off the chair or if they don't have their feet on the floor. Another thing I do is put like 5 tallies on the board, and if someone's not following the rule, I just erase a tally. And when we get to the last tally, if all the tallies disappear, all the chairs go away. It's usually, I'm not in a situation where there's just one kid creating that problem. If it was just one kid, I would not do that, because I wouldn't want one kid to feel responsible for that. Another thing that I love to do is to teach my kids about their brain. And this is an awesome resource. It's the Mind Up curriculum. It's actually Goldie Hawn's Foundation has created this. You can get it on Scholastic. These say $24.99. I believe that I got them even cheaper than that. So there's a K2 version, a 3.5 version, and there's a version for older students. I don't have that because I don't have a use for it at this time. But this basically teaches the kids about 3 parts of the brain, and they love it. They love it, and it really gives them a lot of strategies to calm down. So you teach them about the PFC, which is the wise leader, and then the amygdala, which is their security guard, and the hippocampus, which is where learning is stored. And if the amygdala, your security guard, is overactive, then it blocks the learning from the PFC, which is where you think, to the hippocampus. It blocks learning. This is really great. My 3rd graders are really into this. I've taught it to a group of kindergartners before, and they really got into it too. Oh, thank you, Sheila. So this you can do in about 15 minutes a day, and it has little lessons that teach them strategies to calm their brains and how to be mindful in the classroom. I will give you a tip that this is very helpful for teachers as well, because the more you teach this to kids, the more you realize how you need to be mindful in the classroom. So it has deep breathing and all that kind of stuff. But really, the learning about the parts of the brain is great, and they love saying words like amygdala and hippocampus. Another thing that you can do with that is the amygdala is the center of the brain. So that's your security guard, and the lid is the PFC, the wise leader. And a lot of times we can teach them about flipping their lid. So anytime you kind of freak out, which we all do sometimes, the amygdala takes over. So we call it flipping our lids, and I have them picture a time when they flip their lid, and then they can kind of picture breathing and putting that lid back on, putting that wise leader on, putting that ability to stop and think. This is a really great tool to use. I think I have gone over what I had for today, so I would love it if you guys had some questions or some suggestions for next time. I could talk about this all day. So I would love some, if you had any specific questions about any issues you're having in your classroom. I know that I would, thanks for stopping by, Julie. I'll talk to you soon. Mind Up curriculum. This is the 3rd through 5th grade one. Oh, awesome, Ashley. And this is the K2. I think it's really tricky when dealing with parents. What I have found is some parents are really, the parent has to kind of get there. So I just report what I see. I report when the student is having trouble focusing. There have been some cases in our school where the guidance counselor has suggested a Connor scale or a Vanderbilt, and we have filled that out and just said, you can take this to the doctor if you like. Sometimes I will say, like Benita says, have you noticed that so-and-so has a hard time? Like I remember one parent told me that she couldn't eat dinner with her daughter because no one could eat. The daughter wouldn't eat. Oh, bye, Marion. Thank you. The daughter would never eat because she wouldn't stop talking, and they had to like turn her to the wall so that she could finish her food. And I thought, she really has trouble controlling that impulse to talk at school too, and that kind of spurred the mom to talk to the doctor. We can only control what we can control. And I think if the parent knows that you're working hard to put strategies in place at school, then they're more open to that. No impulse control. I teach a lesson about impulse control. Felicity, what I have found is the wanderers rarely get identified until it comes to a testing grade. We have high stakes testing here. And the hyper ones are, I think the tendency is like ages 7 to 9. No, Ashley, it's not only attention. It's impulse control, focus, executive function. Yeah, I will be back every week, and I am going to focus on autism spectrum for sure. That is one of my great passions. Suzanne, yeah, and sometimes it just takes a while for the parent to get there. I just do whatever I can to implement strategies at school and let the parent know. I also talk to them about how important it is to not call a kid out by name and to not shame them for their behavior. We do that by accident. It's not intentional, but it really is damaging to kids to do that. We have a lot of power when we're teaching small children, long-lasting impacts. Great, Suzanne. I would love to know how they work for you. You can tweet me at Amy Adapts. Absolutely, Miss Second Grade. I have definitely dealt with kids who lash out physically. So we can do behaviors. We can do autism spectrum disorder. I think ADHD could be at least a monthly. I do save my scopes. This is Sheila Jane is the leader of the I Teach TV network. So I think I saw a YouTube channel. This is our first week. But yes, Sheila can let you know where these will be housed. But I thank you guys so much for joining me. This was a lot of fun. I have been wanting to do something like this for a while, and this is a great format for it. Be sure that you share this, and I know some people on the West Coast are still in school, so if you watch the replay and you have a question, be sure to tweet me or tweet the I Teach TV network. And thank you, Sheila. And let me show you the timer again. Visual timer at timetimers.com. This little, anytime you can have a visual, that's really going to help impulse control. Someone asked about that. I do a lesson where I blow bubbles, and I just like blow the bubbles and everyone jumps out and pops them, and then I tell them to control that impulse to pop the bubble, and they can wait, and I just try to make them aware of impulse control whenever I can. It's a long process. There's a lot in this Mind Up curriculum about impulse control as well. Thank you guys. I think all of these apply to middle school. I think in middle school, organization becomes a big tip. My son is in 9th grade, and middle school years were a lot of impulse control going on. I mean, a lot of organization. His impulse control was better in middle school, but the organization was trickier. There is a Mind Up curriculum for middle grades, though. I would definitely look into that. Yeah, Ashley, I would like to hear about that marshmallow lesson. But yeah, I think a lot of this stuff that just comes naturally to us, we just have to teach our kids with attention problems, and they're usually pretty open to it. I have a lot more resources I will be sharing with you in the coming weeks, so thank you guys so much. Be sure to check out I Teach TV Network. I'll turn this around and you can see where you can find me as well. Yes, and I will be back next week, same time. Alrighty, you guys have a great, is it Tuesday? A great Tuesday, and I will see you soon. And be sure to follow this Periscope channel, I Teach TV Network. You're going to have some great teachers coming up to share some great stuff with you this week. Bye.